Welcome to Online Church. Most of you I haven't seen for a few weeks. I'm sure we've been praying for each other and keeping in touch at a distance in whatever ways might work for us. May I encourage you to keep doing that and perhaps find other creative ways to make sure our bond of fellowship in Christ is not broken. Today is Palm Sunday. It's a very familiar story, and we've heard it again in today's Bible reading from Mark chapter 11. Jesus has reached Jerusalem on his final journey, and now he enters the city. He does it in an atmosphere of triumph and celebration, and is acclaimed by the crowds. Some of them had come out from Jerusalem, people who had already come for the festival, and there were those who were accompanying him on his own journey. Once upon a time, we lived in India. For a number of years, we attended a very traditional church, and it had its Palm Sunday traditions. One of them was a procession around the outside of the church. We would start inside, and then led by the choir and singing Palm Sunday hymns, we would all leave the church and do a circuit around the building outside. We'd hold palm crosses, which served as a reminder of the branches in the original Palm Sunday story, as well as a reminder of the cross that faced Jesus before the end of that same week. In that procession, theoretically, the choir led the singing, but it was actually quite a large congregation, and so in reality, the distance between the choir at the front and the stragglers some distance behind meant that not everyone was singing the same thing at the same time. And while all of this was happening, others would arrive late to church, and so when you went back into church at the end of the procession, you would be likely to find that someone else had nicked your seat. It was all very amusing and certainly memorable. It's not something that we're likely to forget in a hurry. Well, Palm Sunday is a celebration, but I want to ask today, what is it celebrating? And we'll do that by considering three perspectives. First of all, there is the perspective of the crowd on the Palm Sunday occasion. What is in their mind as they take part in this celebration? We can be sure it was a celebration. They went out of their way to put suitable items of clothing on the donkey in honour of the rider, as we read in verse 7. And in verse 8, we read that they spread garments and palm branches on the road. But of course the question is why? There were thousands of pilgrims arriving in Jerusalem for the Passover festival. So why pick on this one and make a fuss over him? The words of their acclamation give us the strongest clue. Especially in verse 10, the words, "Blessed is the coming kingdom of our father David." They see a link with David. David was Israel's greatest king, and we can read his story in 1 and 2 Samuel in the Old Testament. Those were the glory days of the nation, but now they are a long time in the past, in fact about a millennium previous. But there had developed the hope of a return of this glory, and actually the Old Testament predicted such a time often connected with a particular leader, a leader often seen as a king, often seen as a new David, a son of David. In Mark, if we go back to the end of the previous chapter, Mark chapter 10, we read the story of blind Bartimaeus, whose sight Jesus restored. Bartimaeus called on Jesus as Son of David when he called out asking for help. He had obviously heard reports of Jesus' activity and interpreted these reports in line with the nation's hope of a new David. Son of David, he cries out. And there were similar thoughts in the mind of the crowd, the hope of a king. As Jesus rode towards Jerusalem on a donkey, the more alert among the crowd may have recalled the prophecy of Zechariah, chapter 9, verse 9, which says, "Your king comes to you, lowly and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey." So here is our first perspective on Palm Sunday, the crowd's perspective. Is that what Jesus is on about in this event? Is the crowd right or wrong to see Jesus as the long-anticipated king? Before I come back for our next part, I want you to have a think about that or chat to others with you, whether you reckon the crowd was on the right track or not. See if you can find reasons for your opinion.